Okay, so that was our show on gun control, and I think it went very well. I liked what I mean, didn't necessarily agree with, but everyone had something to say. So, what do you think, Bara?
I really enjoyed it. Michael was a wealth of knowledge and had plenty to say. Um, it's a topic that I've not really, I developed my opinion on it way back, and I've never really revisited it. Although, we keep having, events happen in our world that bring up the subject in the news. And tonight was very informative, and I won't spoil it for anyone, but we did implement the opening statement and the end conclusion if anyone's opinion had changed. So that's something we want to keep a main feature. But yeah, it was a really good show. We unfortunately lost Will. We had a few new guests, new faces, and yeah, it was our first show that we'd done where we had Twitch and YouTube streaming, and we had a good few questions there. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way the show's going. It is episode 2, and we are going to keep it every 2 weeks. And if you want to announce to the listeners what the next show will be.
Okay, we are going to do a show on immigration. So, once again, we'll invite people on and see what people feel, how they feel. As a liberal, some liberals may not like my views, whatever, but but once again, we shall see. And and just going forward, just so people will know that, again, this is a show that we want to kind of push the boundaries, whatever. So we want to talk about things that people don't want to say, or you know, I mean, people think a lot of things, but they don't necessarily want to say them. So even if you're not here on the panel, hopefully you'll join us where you can, join in on Twitch or YouTube and soon Facebook. But yeah,
Mhm. As long as you're respectful, I think that's the key thing. You can have very strong views and very offensive views even, but as long as you're respectful in the way that you put them across, because just because it's your opinion doesn't mean to say it's a right opinion. Facts and statistics and all that stuff are very a key for my beliefs, and I know that is something that can also be facts and things can be misinterpreted, and context can be provided. But yeah, I'm really happy with the way the show's going, and guys, we'll have this uploaded um, tomorrow night, hopefully, once we add the intro and the video. So yeah.
I do want to ask you one question. You get disappointed when people's views don't change.
Mhm. I mean, I can't really say that because well, I mean, being biased, you would have to if they were at the start of the show they disagreed with you. I'm sure you would want it to disagree to change to then agree with you. Um, so you can't. I mean, that's a very biased viewpoint, but ultimately, we think we are right as humans for a reason. So we would want everyone to think the same as us. Um, but we know that's not the case. So what about yourself?
Um, I don't get disappointed. I mean, people are going to think the way they think because I know that I didn't budge. Even though you all made some good points, whatever. I still think, I mean, because I look at America and I compare it to the UK, to Australia, whatever. You know, our crime rate is just ridiculous. Every time you turn around, it's a shooting. And it gets to the point. I think I had said once before that you hear on the news that there's, someone got shot or school this. I'm like, oh, okay. And I keep doing what I'm doing. But a couple of years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, whatever. But now it's like every other week. So,
Mm,
and I think and I think it's bad for me to feel that way. I think it's bad that I'm just looking at it as, oh, okay, you know,
yeah.
and I think that's a problem that we have in this country because of our guns. So,
Yeah. I get that, and I know it's like we're accepting a lesser life. You know, it's like, why do we have to put up with these things? But
Mhm.
ultimately, as well, you know, here in the UK, like I'll touch upon in the show, we don't have the same access to guns that you guys have, and our crime rate is high, very high, and that's with the use of knives, bats, you know, fists, anything, and you can make anything into a weapon nowadays that can
True.
your fists. So I know that the whole thing around guns is usually, you know, the feelings and the emotions because of what that gun can do. Um, but ultimately, I also say in the show that, you know, a lot of lives are saved because of guns. But anyway, I don't want to ruin it too much.
Okay.
Guys, please check out our show. Please like, share, follow. Follow us on Instagram. I've started an Instagram page, Friendly Differences Pod. Um, Look for us on YouTube and BitChute. That's where the video goes up. And anywhere for audio, you can find us. We use Anchor, and that distributes it to about 7 other platforms: Spotify, Castbox, Google, iTunes. So yeah, we're pretty much everywhere. So from me, thanks for your continuous support and your questions, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
We are now live.
Okay, we're now live.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you
Okay.
guys for tuning in to episode 2 of the Friendly Differences podcast. I'm your host, Baram U podcast, and my co host, Solid Blue, who I'll pass you on to soon. Me and Solid Blue have started this show. As I said, it is just our second show, but we're so excited about it. It's been something that we've come together and realised that a lot of these debates, political debates, societal debates, is a real passion of ours. And along with the help of some of our Podbean friends that we have on the show tonight, Michael Kee, Jester, Chillwell, and we do have Pook, who is here, but he keeps, jumping in and out. He's having some technical difficulties, so bear with us on that. We've decided to do the second show on gun control. The first debate was a success. We loved it. We did feel as if we weren't very combative enough. We felt we were too passive. So tonight, hopefully, that changes. I don't know any of these guys' views on gun control. So hopefully it'll be a great show. I think we're streaming on YouTube and Twitch at the moment. So if you're there, feel free to comment. And we have an admin, Juju, in the background. So thanks to Juju for keeping an eye on the comments. And I think Solid Blue can have them accepted so that they'll appear on the screen. So that's a great thing to have. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Solid, and we can get on with the show.
You've pretty much said it all. I'm just excited for this panel, especially one particular person who's trying to turn me into a conservative. But you know, but we shall see. We shall see, because I have some interesting facts that you guys may not know. But Bob, this is you're taking the lead. So
Okay. So I'll just go around the room and first of all introduce yourself. You can say as little or as much as you want to about you. Also, I know you guys have got your own shows, so please feel free to plug them where people can find you. And then we'll come back to me, and then we'll go around the room for our initial feelings about gun control, and then we'll get started on the debate. So, Michael Kee.
So our feelings on gun control.
No, just a bit about
Oh,
yourself
sorry.
and your show to start with. Let the
Yeah.
listener Yeah.
So I host the Real Conservative Talk podcast. I don't think I'm the one Solid was referencing to as far as trying to turn her into a conservative. That's not necessarily my goal with anyone, but I do host a Real Conservative Talk podcast. We talk about a bunch of different things, gun control being one of them. With the title of that podcast, I'm sure everyone is probably well aware of my stance on gun control. But yeah, that's really, really about it.
Yep. And Jester, what about yourself?
Pook joined.
Jester, you
You're
are
muted.
muted.
You're muted.
Got it. Okay, it's a drop-down menu. I just figured it out. Hello, everybody. My name is Jester from It's Doomsday podcast. I did have a question. How do we find the YouTube link for if we want to share this out? What is the YouTube?
It is
It
Friendly
is- oh.
Differences. Friendly Differences podcast.
Cool. I'm going to share it out to some people.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Do you know if we can share this on the live stream, the YouTube live stream on Facebook by any chance?
We can,
Yeah.
but I did not set up the Facebook link. I didn't get a chance to do that.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering because if you could, I could put it on my page. I have almost 4,000 followers. If it would live stream it to the Facebook page too, and it live stream your guys's channel, I could try it.
Okay.
Okay, and Chilwell, we know you've been here before, but just a little bit about yourself, and you're muted also. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, good. I got you. Well, yeah, I'm still with. Hey, everybody. I'll be here sitting still here soon, so I can appropriately add to the conversation. But yeah, it's just me, just a guy, a very opinionated guy, with a little and a lot to say at the same time. But it's good to see our faces, and hey, I'm sure we're gonna have a good spirited debate.
And Pook, who we cannot see at the moment, if you're there, bud, just a little bit about yourself and tell the listeners where they can find you if you have a show.
I don't have a show currently, and apparently when you sign up for Podbean, you have to say you're going to start one or something. So mine just says 0. My name is Shane. I live in Houston, Texas, and I stay busy, and I'm always willing to contribute in some way, sometimes.
Nice.
Can you guys see me?
No.
Nope.
I don't understand, because when Will came in, it bumped me off again.
I'll do it. You'll have at the bottom of the screen a mute, a stop video, a share, and a leave. If you click the upward arrow next to the stop video, you should be able to put your video input.
It says I'm starting the video.
Oh, here we go. Well, it looks as if it's doing something. Anyway, guys, while you can deal with that just now. I'll start the show with my initial feeling around gun control. When I first got into politics, roughly about 2014, and I stumbled across the gun control conversation, it wasn't something that I had preconceived notions about or any opinions on, because obviously being from the UK, guns were taken away, I think, in 1997. They're not illegal here, they're just more of a privilege. So, I was born in 1988, and it's never been a thing here. It's never really been mentioned. So when I first got into that, debate, argument, listening to, more famously, please tell me, guys, you've seen the debate between, well, it's not really a debate between Piers Morgan and Alex Jones. It's hilarious. And I watched that again today just to refresh my memory. But what I'll tell you guys is, when I watched that video for the first time, I actually sided with Piers Morgan, because it made me look at Alex Jones like a kid, like a child that was being told, you're not getting some candy. It was like the speech around it, like, don't you dare take away our guns. Because I was uneducated on why people needed to have guns, that's how it sounded. And I was a victim of that, and I've completely done a U-turn on that once I educated myself on the importance of the Second Amendment. So I've got, facts and statistics I'll get into later on the show, but ultimately for me, I think the Second Amendment is so important. I would say the First Amendment is more important, but the Second Amendment's not far behind it, because especially what we've just gone through in the last 2 years, I know for my own self, and I know a lot of people here in the UK have often said in the last couple of years, America is so lucky that they have the guns, because just look at Australia, what's happening there. And I mean, I'm just talking recent events like what's happened in the last 2 years. I'm sure you guys could probably talk about things that's happened in the past, and I mean, we could even go back in historical times. And I know there's a famous quote from Alex Jones there that Hitler took the guns, Stalin took the guns. He rattled off all these tyrannical leaders. And I think when you listen to a gun control debate, you'll have two types of people. You'll have one person who is pro-gun, who in my opinion is pro-facts and statistics and rationality, and then you have someone who is for more gun control, which I'm not closed-minded to. I think could be improvements that could be made, but you'll have that person that will be ultimately trying to make more gun control, who are emotionally attached, using their emotions, talking about Sandy Hook, Las Vegas shooting, bringing up emotional hard stories to hear. Which again, we need both types of people in the world. But when you're taking away people's rights and things, I tend to side on the people that are using facts and statistics. So that's where I stand on that. Michael, if you want to take over.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, Bob. And something I often say is, and what people don't realize, so the Bill of Rights in the United States is the first 10 amendments. The reason why the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment, in my opinion, they're kind of listed in terms of importance, even though they're all important, extremely important. But you need the ability to speak up, and we know this. Think about all the events, all the changes that have happened in the United States in particular, with any issue, often was solved by someone having to speak up, protest, or just raise awareness. And the right to do so is defended by the Second Amendment itself. If you look over in Russia right now, some people say, well, Putin's cracking down on fake news, and he doesn't want these outlets reporting on things that aren't true. But he's not just not allowing them to report, he's imprisoning the people that are protesting their opinion on whether or not their citizens should be sent over to a country to die for something that they don't believe in. And when you start going down that route and imprisoning people and, for political purposes or speech purposes, right, they don't have the ability to enforce anything. There can never be a change in a country like that, when they don't have any control. So just kind of, and I know we'll get into the statistics and stuff, and so I'll save that for the whole conversation. But that's, just my general viewpoint as far as the importance of firearms, especially here in the United States. And, you hear a lot of people talk about the whole New World Order. I know Boz looks into all that stuff, and especially on Podbean, there's a lot of people that believe in that. Well, if you think about it, the United States, in that sense, with the Second Amendment, would be the last place to uphold any kind of defense against that occurring as well. So it is extremely important, and I'll pass it on there, and getting more into it as we go on.
Okay, solid.
You're muted.
Yeah,
there you go.
Gun control does not mean no guns. And I know the right has a way of saying the left wants to take away our guns. They're going to take away our guns. Oh my God. No, no, no. Second Amendment, and that's not true. It's like one thing that I can say that conservatives do very well is they can spin, they can spin, they can spin, they can spin, they can spin. They can take one word and just change it into something, in my opinion, that is not. And you know, gun control is just, in my opinion, crazy people should not own guns. Now you look back for, I live Southern Cal. People think that people in California are crazy. We have, Newsom. Oh my God, he's this, he's that, whatever. When you go back in history and you look at the gun control in California, they were all done, all of them, the banning and everything, by Republican governors. When the Black Panthers marched to the state Capitol back in 1967. Oh my God, the black people are coming. The black people are coming. Ronald Reagan signed a ban. And again, if you look back at just all of, going back as far as, 1863, when the first concealed to carry ban, it was by a Republican governor. And up until, up until like the mid 50s, when they just had a waiting period, which a Democratic governor did, all of the bans have been from Republicans. But people, they don't want to talk about that. They want to say, California is this liberal state, whatever, which it wasn't until maybe the started to turn blue back in the 90s. But California was red. So when you look at gun control, I am 100% for it. I think we need to control it because crazy people do not need to have guns. People who can go and shoot up a school or a nursing home or a nightclub, whatever. To me, those people are crazy. I own guns. Do I want people coming to take mine? No. But again, I'm not going to go and go to a school and start shooting everyone. So again, gun control does not mean we want to take your guns. I just think that I think that you should have a check. If there's something that's in your background that's like maybe you shouldn't own a gun. But if your background check is fine, hey, you can go and get as many guns as you want. For assault weapons, I don't think people should have them. The person who actually made the assault rifle regrets it because it's turned into something that he did not want. Why do you need an assault rifle to go shooting? I mean, you're going to shoot a deer with an assault rifle? I mean, seriously. I mean, just certain things are just, to me, it's just like common sense. But I think that it's always spun as if one side says no, the other side says yes, when I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a case of can we just, whoever buys a gun, can they just have common sense and can they be a responsible person?
Okay, and Jester, would you like to give your opening remarks on your opinions on gun control?
Absolutely. There's been a lot to take in between you, Michael Kee, and Solid Blue at the moment. So like, I'm in the, I'm processing right now. I do think that we need to be careful about who does have firearms, who does own them. I definitely think when it comes to mental health checks, that should be a thing. And you guys know I'm very conservative. I'm very right leaning. I'm very pro gun. But no, I can agree that not everybody should have one. I was raised in a household where guns were a thing. I got my first gun when I was 4 or 5 years old. I've been shooting my entire life. Having a gun around is like having a hammer. That's how it was around our house. We never had any accidents. Nobody ever did anything crazy. And even when I worked law enforcement, I never had to use a gun on anybody. I've had to pull out my gun a couple of times, but I never had to shoot anybody. Thank God. I wouldn't want that on my conscience. But there's a fine line. When we talk about people that are crazy, there's a fine line if we could identify that or not. Some people hide crazy very, very well. And the people that do these assessments, the psychiatrists and the mental health doctors and stuff like that, they're only human, so they can make mistakes too when it comes to judging these individuals. But as Solid Blue was saying, the Democrats or Republicans, it's whoever's, I think, kind of pushing them in that direction. The idea behind the Second Amendment is it's not supposed to be infringed upon, and we've been infringing upon it for years. Every day there's a new regulation, they're putting out something different. And I think the main reason everybody references California with this is because of all the different individual steps California's putting in place. When we talk about the AR-15, you have to own you're only allowed to own a special California compliant AR-15 in that state. To where pretty much every other state out there, you can just get a regular AR-15. So California is kind of the model that everybody looks at when they think gun control or when they think, compliancy.
Okay, and Pook, are you there? And would you like to give your opening statement on gun control?
Sure, I've been trying to get video, and I apologize. But Lisa, I do disagree with you on this. I'm as liberal as it gets, and I think where it needs to stop is where we're dividing right and left, red and blue, and making sure that we're following a path to solve the challenges that we have first. And I can tell you right now, everybody says, oh, background checks, this and that. I don't know about anybody else, but I know in Texas, if I walk into the store this afternoon when I go buy this new gun, they're going to pull my, I think it's called ATIS. They're going to pull ATIS, and they're going to pull the report on me, and I'm going to pass in probably 10 minutes or less, and I can buy whatever I want and walk out of the store. But I do think that there's a mental health issue here. The challenge with that is that where does it stop? And it's just like, it's no secret I'm pro-choice, right? But at the same time, when you kind of align the whole vaccine issue to it, everybody has a choice to do that, and you're okay with that, but you're not okay with everybody's choice to do what they want with their bodies, right? So there's hypocrisy there. And I think that hypocrisy lies right in the middle of this red and blue issue. And I'm not calling you a hypocrite. Please don't take it that way. You know me. But I think that it's not a political issue. I think it's more of a responsibility issue for the individual gun owner and everybody else around. And in my state, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, they just passed, this past September, they allowed constitutional carry. And what that means is prior to that, you can have a concealed weapon permit. Now they have constitutional carry. I'm from the Virginia Beach, Outer Banks area, so it's a little bit different in Virginia because they are an open carry now, or what they want to call it as a constitutional carry. And last year when I went home, I saw people running around with guns in their pant line. And here in Texas, the laws are a little bit different. The assumption for the people that don't know the law is that you can walk around with a gun just in your belt line. You don't have to have any permits or anything else, but in fact, that's not true. And as unfortunate as it is, Greg Abbott sold us out on our Fourth Amendment right to illegal search and seizure to get the second, or to get that constitutional carry pushed through. So you've got all these challenges, and then when it comes to mental health, our particular state, if you were my neighbor and I said, this guy's out here at 2 o'clock in the morning howling at the moon, I think there's an issue going on with him and it's a mental issue, then your right to own that gun and your right to not carry that gun is stripped right then and there without cause. And I think that's unfair at the end of the day. Can you see me? You're muted.
No, I can't see you, Pook. Are you? Is that you done? Are you done?
No, I see Lisa talking, but she's muted or something.
Oh no, I was just I'm sorry. I was just raising my hand because I wanted to comment after you finished.
Yeah. I will give
but
Lisa. Sorry. Are you finished, Pook? On you go.
Just
on you go.
one more second. When we look at assault weapons, I'm going to be real honest with you. I have what weapons I want. And if somebody's going to come at me with an AK, I'm going to make sure I have something to defend myself. And a little 6-shooter revolver is not going to do the trick. And when you've got to be able to match that power. And I'm an advocate for the police to have military type weapons. My nephew is a federal law enforcement agent, and I believe that if he has armor-piercing bullets coming at him, then him and every single police officer in this country needs to have the right to have that kind of equipment. And I think we should fund it.
Okay.
That's very
Okay,
liberal
Lisa.
of you, Pook.
I know.
I'm
No,
just
I'm
kidding.
middle of the road.
this is where it gets tricky because, just like with COVID, the vaccines and stuff, I'm not saying everybody has to go stand in line and, get a shot. I did. I felt that was what was right for me. I mean, in the end, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do. But when is it too much? In terms of the law enforcement having military style stuff, okay, that's fine. But do they have to show up at, somebody's house
Troll
who is what do I want to say? If someone, if my neighbor called and said that they heard my husband and I, and we're, going at it, do I think that law enforcement should show up at my house, in this, military gear? No. I mean, so it's like, when is it overkill? And you are walking that fine line. In the end, it is a choice, but it has to be, there has to be some kind of way that we can control or have a say in who owns a gun and who doesn't, especially if those people who want guns are not responsible people. That is all I'm saying. Irresponsible people should not own guns. People who will, get upset because you were playing cards and they lost and you owed them $5 and they're going to shoot you. I mean, this happens. That's crazy. So
I can't raise my hand.
So I don't know.
Yeah, before we jump to Chill Will, we've got him back. We have a question. I was just wondering how we get those questions over onto the screen, but I think solid you've done that, have you? We have a question here from Josh H. Make sure that they know that AR does not stand for assault rifle.
Yeah,
It actually
doesn't.
stands for
Yeah. Armalite.
What is it? Automatic rifle.
No. It stands for Armalite. Armalite is
Armalite.
the company Eugene Stoner founded Armalite and is the father of the AR-15 and the M16. So Eugene Stoner created two rifles, right? A civilian version and a military version. The M16 was the standard issue starting in Vietnam, which is what you see the people shooting over there, which is actually different than the AR-15 that you see us owning in the civilian world today. Now the M16 has evolved into the M4, which is our standard military issue rifle now, but there is a difference. And so the common misconception is AR means automatic rifle or assault rifle. The assault rifle thing to me is a joke because we consider assault, the crime of assault, when you go and you punch someone in the face or you beat them up, or verbal assault, right? You can assault someone with a hammer. You can assault someone with your words. You can assault someone with your fist. All right. So any gun used in a crime used to harm someone else is an assault weapon. Makes sense? So AR, it just coincidentally, has the same abbreviation. Maybe we should change it from AR to, I don't know, something else so people don't confuse that. But it means Armalite. It has nothing to do with its intention.
Yeah, and also while we're on the subject, it would maybe be a good idea to say, like, in America, what do you guys have the rights to own? Because I know that the semi-automatic, the automatic, the pistols are involved in the semi-automatic because it's just basically one pull of the trigger releases one bullet. and
Mhm.
the automatic are just pull the trigger and so I mean there could be an argument there. It's something that I've not really thought too much about, but I mean I know there's people that say do citizens really need to have guns that can automatically shoot when you hold the trigger and and it fills the whole magazine, because of the destruction and damage that could do. There's probably people that could defend that, and like I say, I don't know my opinion, but ultimately that argument is one that we could go down that route. But first of all, I'll jump to Chill Will, just to give your initial statement on your feelings about gun control.
I'll kind of spit about this issue because on one hand, I'm kind of on board with some here. You just don't need, AR-15, M16. Like, I mean, or some things you just don't need to defend yourself. Or not going to war. You know what I'm saying? But it could be the apocalypse one day, right? So who's to say you shouldn't be prepared for it, right? So my thing is that from my experiences, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because people who have guns in my community, they probably have them that I grew up in. They got them anyway. I mean, that just means that the people who legally obtain guns won't have them, and then the people who would obtain them illegally would have them. So typically, if they're doing something wrong or if they have ill will, bad intentions, that's how they got the gun anyway. So it's not like they're running around with an illegal gun and serial number scraped off and things of that nature. It's not a So why can't the people who want to legally obtain guns and legally defend themselves have the same access? Because you're putting them at a disadvantage for the most part, depending on where you live at. And so, and so how do you even get the guns off the street? Number one, you know what I'm saying? I feel like more gun control. It puts just a disadvantage to the people who really want to actually use the guns in the proper way. Historically, though, I just feel like I think it should be fair for everybody, though. In each state, to be honest, because there's so many varying laws in each state. I can go over the whole history of like the California gun laws were ridiculous, and it was clearly based off of you see a whole bunch of brothers on the steps of City Hall. California gun laws can change real quick. Right, and I'm talking about the Black Panthers. That shit changed real quick. So and then they were exercising their right, and we just seen that a couple of years ago. A couple of our Caucasian brothers did the same thing in a different way. I don't think they changed the gun laws. So historically, America is kind of but overall, you definitely need. I mean, I don't want to have me being legally not being able to get a gun when these crazy MFers out here and then they just and I don't think that should be right. You should be able to defend yourself and your family accordingly.
Bob, if you don't mind, if I
Yeah, on you go, Michael. Feel free.
and so I've been writing notes just so I can keep up. I got that idea from Chill Will when he said he writes down notes when we have the conversations and the other podcasts. But a couple things, and I think going back to what Solid Blue's sister said about the Republican and Democrat thing. Here's what I haven't looked at the statistics, but here's how I feel about it: is anyone that wants to infringe on those rights, needs to be held accountable, and that's a problem. Whether you're in California, Florida, anywhere. I think that both sides have I know both sides have put in legislation that limits someone's ability to own a firearm or a certain type of firearm. Here's how I see it. Even though I'm a conservative and I am a registered Republican, I don't really side with Republicans, and I probably side with them less and less as time goes on because I think them and the Democrats are pretty much all the same. I am an originalist to the Constitution, though. The Second Amendment reads that we should have the right to bear arms. And let me actually pull up the actual writing here. It says, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The definition of infringed is they can't change. You can't alter it. You can't overstep. In the Declaration of Independence, it reads, let me pull it back up here. I had it here. But in the first line, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And it ends the sentence out that we are given inalienable rights. Inalienable means that they cannot be altered, they cannot be changed, they cannot be taken away. People often want to relate, driving, like, oh, well, you have to have a driver's permit or a driver's license to drive a car. Driving and owning a firearm are not the same thing. Driving is a privilege, not a right. Owning a firearm in the United States is a right. We are not gifted the right to drive vehicles in our Constitution. There is a reason why we have the Second Amendment, and it's not for hunting purposes. It's for, and this is also written in our Constitution, that to protect us from not just foreign enemies, but our own government itself. And it also states in the Constitution that if the people see that the government has overreached, then they have the right, not just the right, but the responsibility to hold the government responsible and change that government as they see fit. So when you start talking about, oh, you don't need this rifle, you don't need this rifle, actually, if you look back, our founding fathers completely intended for us to own rifles like the AR-15. The U.S. Revolution, the U.S. or the Continental Army or the colonists at that time actually used rifles that were more advanced than the British armies. We had stuff like the Pennsylvania rifle. We used guerrilla warfare tactics. We actually were one of the first people to implement sniping because we could shoot from further distances because we had rifling, which they had muskets. They weren't as accurate. So they did that because they wanted the people to have the ability to defend their freedoms against the government. So it's not that, oh, you don't need an AR-15 to go hunting. No, it's you need that AR-15 kind of going to like what Pook said is to defend when a government oversteps. When you go back to like what Chill Will talked about with the Black Panthers exercising a right in California on the steps, and he's like, man, you see gun laws change real quick. I'm against that. I think it doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are. If you're a citizen of the United States, then you have the ability to exercise the rights that are given to the citizens of the United States in the American Constitution. It's kind of like, when do we take voting rights away? Well, usually when someone breaks the law. Everyone should be able to utilize their rights until you do something that, forces you to get that taken away. These things are just abiding by the Constitution. Now, if you want to go off the statistics, when you start saying, well, assault rifles, or not assault, I hate using that term, but an AR-15 or a rifle, shouldn't be allowed to be in civilians' hands. There's an estimated 20 million AR-15 style rifles. So that could be an AK, that could be an AR, that could be a whole bunch of, these high 30-round capacity magazines, 60-round magazines, rifles that fire semi-automatic. 20 million. Out of that, in 2021, only just over 300 people, this is including all the mass shootings and everything, 300 people were killed with a rifle. A rifle includes your semi-automatic ARs, your AKs, and a bolt-action hunting rifle. It's just a rifle. 300 people, which is like, what, 0.1%, maybe? Of all the gun homicides in which was around 40-some thousand in 2021 or 2020, sorry, only 300 of those were used with a rifle. So 3% of gun deaths in the United States are actually occur because of the very weapon that Congress is focusing on banning. So even if you got rid of the so-called assault rifles, you still have all of the homicides pretty much that you would have when they weren't around or when they were around. So the statistics don't add up as far as the semi-automatics. Here's the other thing. The only reason why people blame the ARs is because of what they look like. It's, a hunting rifle. I have a Browning BAR Safari Mark II. It is a semi-automatic 30-06 rifle, which is the same round used in the M1 Garand in World War II, which probably killed more people in this world, than anything during that time. And it shoots just as fast as the AR if you wanted to. And the round is about that much bigger. It's huge compared to the 5.56. If you use statistics, the reasoning behind why we are allowed to have these firearms, it just doesn't make sense, honestly. And then as far as like mental health, I agree there are certain people that shouldn't own a firearm. I 100% agree with you. But like what Pook said, when do we stop? One of the bills that was proposed, I believe 2019 by, was it Sheila Jackson Lee? They wanted to keep firearms out of anyone that had a mental health disorder. What they didn't do is define what a mental health disorder is. Now, a lot of you know I have Tourette syndrome. That's a mental health disorder. I've taken medicine for that. But my Tourette's do not dictate my mental state at all. It's just an involuntary movement of my body and stuff, right, that derives from my brain. That's it. But based under their laws, they were going to disqualify me and then people who have like things like ADHD and all that from owning these firearms. So there needs to be a fine line on what is acceptable and what's not. I completely 100% believe that they try to implement laws in such a way, and we see this with the lawsuit with the Sandy Hook thing that just happened when they were able to sue Remington, who had nothing to do with the kid that took his mom's legally purchased firearm, who was off of his medication, all right, went and shot up a school, and that was like one of the saddest things probably to happen in this country. It really was. But Remington had nothing to do with that. The firearm was legally purchased, and it was legally purchased from a gun dealer, a legal gun dealer, not the gun manufacturer, but they're trying to implement it. And Gavin Newsom just signed off on a law to where California citizens will be able to sue these gun manufacturers as well, where they can take it to the gun manufacturer, sue them for $70 million. It's paid out with insurance money. Well, that's going to cause insurance companies not to want to insure these companies because they don't want the liability, and they're not going to want to enter the civilian market. Colt, I believe, already exited the civilian market for the most part because of certain things like that. That's how they're going to get them away from the civilians. The only reason why they want to implement laws like that is not because of what they do in the states as far as killing people, because the statistics don't add up. It's a control thing. If you disarm the population, then you have control. What is the first thing Ukraine did when they got invaded? They started passing out AKs and every weapon they can get their hands on to the civilians to defend their country from a foreign entity. Well, it was almost too late by that point. So there's a lot of good reasons why we have these weapons.
Well said, Michael, and very informative. And we actually have a comment that I'd like you to address because I think it is aimed at you. And actually, it's my mate Mitchell23119. I was talking to him briefly about tonight, and he's obviously listening. And I can add a little bit of context to his question because I know his stance. And this is what I was thinking throughout your conversation, and after everyone's given their initial feelings. It's a shame that we don't have anyone on here that completely wants to take all guns away from citizens. And I actually think to myself, I think those people are few and far between, especially in America. I think it'd be harder to find someone who is for taking all guns away from people. But I'll tell you now, you're going to get people in the UK and other countries that will have that. And I don't know for sure, because like I said, it was just a brief conversation with my friend, and he believes that guns shouldn't be in the hands of civilians. And I think what he's aiming at here, he's wrote, I don't know if you can see it, but he's wrote, "Wow, I can't believe you've just compared having a driving license to having a gun." So, when you mentioned about a driving license is a privilege and owning a gun is a right, if you could just expand on that for him, maybe.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying, I would expect people from the UK to be against Americans owning firearms because it caused them a lot of problems a couple hundred years ago. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, in all seriousness, okay, there are people in the United States, and I think it's changing though, especially after maybe some of the stuff that went on with COVID. All right, but there are people that would want no one to have a firearm, right? There is a difference, again, going back to a privilege and a right. And maybe this is just something that's been bred into us as Americans for the last 250 years. You can go back, you can say, okay, the Revolutionary War, all right, there was actually in what they consider an insurrection right after the revolution when our government was first created, all right, where no one was shot, but there was a militia, a state militia that rose up against the new federal form of government, all right, and it got some problems solved. We have the Civil War is a big one, all right, and then I want to also point out civil rights, all right, and like what Chill Will said with the Black Panthers, okay, and the firearms. Were there encroachments there? I think if they limited guns because a bunch of black people were on the steps of a Capitol building with firearms, that's not right. But because change comes from that, all right? Like I said, a right is something that is given to us that cannot be infringed. And in the United States, our Constitution is not laws that limit the United States citizens. It's actually grants the U.S. citizens freedoms and limits the government's power over the citizens, okay? The Constitution outlines laws that the government has to abide by, not the citizens. But when you start talking about driving is nowhere in there, all right? I often say the Constitution is the greatest invention of mankind. Why? Because it's led to the more innovation in this world, all right? The creation of a republic that is often modeled around the world. Look at all the NATO countries after World War II. And it is written in a way that it can adapt. Like, okay, black people didn't have the right to vote at first. It was expanded on, all right, by adding freedoms, which is the only thing it should ever do, to where it captures all of them, okay? And therefore, everyone in there has these rights that cannot be infringed on. You have to be able to own the firearm to uphold those rights. Otherwise, they can go and just overstep. Driving is just a whole different concept in general. But the other thing that's interesting, though, when you talk about a driver's license, what do? Okay, you have to go and you have to pass a driver's test. You may check your eyesight. Do they ever give you a background check? No. Anyone can drive. A felon can drive after they get out of jail, right? It's actually very easy to get a driver's license. And with that said, but we actually have very strict laws in place. Believe it or not, like Pook said, you have to go and you have to get the federal background checks. All right. Which, by the way, did you also know when you go and you buy, I know it's a pistol here in Tennessee, it may have changed to a rifle. If I wanted to buy 3 guns today, I have to get a background check for all 3 weapons right there in the store. They're background checking the same person, but they have to do a background check for each weapon. And then some states now make you wait, was it a 24-hour wait or a 3-day wait? There's a lot that goes into this, but there's a strict difference between a privilege and a right. It's hard to understand because I think a lot of it's a cultural thing here in the United States that maybe people in other countries don't understand. But as you see with everyone on this panel, as much as we do disagree, we all exercise that right, and we all seem to believe that we have the ability to have that right too, or that we are entitled to that right. So maybe it is a cultural thing, but there is a big difference, and you could probably look at the definition between a privilege and a right.
Okay, and we'll go to Solid. I know you've had your hand up for a while, so on you go.
I agree with some of what Michael says and disagree with a lot of what he says. When you look at the second amendment, it was, in my opinion, I understand what you're saying about, the government wanted us to be able to defend our homes or what have you, but it was also meant because, King George was sending his British soldiers over, and it was the right to bear arms because the British did not want the Americans to have guns. So that's basically where it came from. But when you start talking about a privilege and a right, what Chill said and what I said about the Panthers, again, it was in the 1960s, whatever. But again, the Panthers, they went to Sacramento with firearms, and all of a sudden, there's this ban. Fast forward to 2020, you have all these people going to Michigan, storming the Capitol, getting up in people's faces, what have you, with guns. Nothing happens. So a privilege and a right. It's like one group has a privilege and the other group is always fighting for a right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the Constitution, it didn't include people that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
It included people that look like you, your gender.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, America, we're different in so many ways and stuff, and we're so hypocritical on so many phases. When I look at law enforcement, and again, I'm going to bring up the when Fred Hampton was murdered, he was murdered by the Chicago police while he slept. They shot 120 bullets into his room while he slept. When they took him out, his mattress was soaking with blood. Law enforcement, sorry, you don't have that right. You shouldn't have that power. That was murder.
Did they enter the house too?
They did not enter the house until after they had shot it up. Okay. But he was sleeping on a mattress by himself. They think they rated it like 5 a.m. or something like this. But they murdered him. And law enforcement should not have that right. And I think that's when you give a law enforcement officer a firearm, there's a responsibility that comes with that. If I have one, there's a responsibility that comes with it. If you give a 5-year-old one, there's a responsibility that comes with it. So again, when you say right, and it's like, again, some people have the privilege and other people are constantly fighting for that right. So who gets to own one and who doesn't? Again, we have that very fine line.
And I agree, because it shouldn't be about who gets to exercise the right. Okay, because remember what I brought up the 15th Amendment, 14th, 15th Amendment, right, where it captures everyone. All right, that's when, Black people are now a part of the Constitution, right? That's right after the Civil War. They're allowed to vote. They're given the rights. And then you go to even the Snyder Act in 1924 that brings Native Americans into it and gave them all citizenship, whether they lived on reservations or not, right? As soon as everyone is captured, all right, at that point, and they're under that Constitution, everyone should have the equal right to exercise that freedom. Now we're getting into another problem, like you said, of how we approach that right. It's not a firearm problem. It's not a Second Amendment problem. It's not a Constitution problem. It's the way that the government enforces certain things. Because I do understand where you're coming from in saying, well, it doesn't seem, it obviously, by example, it doesn't seem like, black people have the same rights as white people. We can agree on this. But the reason why it's not necessarily hypocritical to me as much as it is to the people that enforce our laws is because I actually believe that black people should be. When I went and got my concealed carry permit here, all right, my two roommates were both black. One had a concealed carry permit, the other one didn't. I took him with me. I staunchly believe that everyone should try and go get that, especially people in the black community. Go exercise that right. Go and take advantage of that. And it should not be enforced differently. It should be enforced the same. So I do understand that there is a fundamental problem there, right? So, but we shouldn't change the laws because it's not the laws that we have aren't being enforced properly, or they're being enforced unequally. They just need to be enforced equally. That's the thing. And I think we need to focus on how we're going to enforce these laws equally instead of just changing it to where it hurts everybody. And so this goes back to, there's so many reasons why people want to get rid of certain firearms or get rid of certain laws or limit speech, but they don't want to look at like underlying causes as to why this stuff even happens. Because the gun doesn't ever kill anybody. It takes someone to pull that trigger, and it takes someone getting to that point to pull that trigger. Because as far as I know, no one on this panel has purposely gone out and committed murder with a firearm. And for us to do so, it would take something happening to us that got us to that point. But I think it goes back to just a whole different issue when you start talking about, well, it seems like mine's a privilege and yours is a right.
Mhm.
It should not be that way. And I agree it should not be that way. So,
Yeah.
So that's just how I see that.
Yeah, I think we come across this a lot, and I'm not, solidly. You're great for pointing out those injustices, and for anyone that was to stand up for those injustices, then I'm sure we would all defend, your beliefs on that, because it's ultimately what I always say is it's not us that are taking away those rights of minorities or black people or the people that are being ostracized or oppressed or whatever. Ultimately it's the government, and there's no one better on this panel than me to, I'll fully back you on that, because I know the government are the ones that do that, and they do it purposely. They weaponize their oppression to get us, divided and all that. So, Jester, you've had a lot to unpack there, a lot to listen to, and if you want to take the conversation in a different way, because I think Michael's been very informative on that, and yeah, on you go.
Yeah, so I got three things I wanted to throw out there real quick. I want to start first with the race side of this. So you're right, Bots. It's just a way to keep division. And whenever you guys go out and you purchase a firearm, one of the things you're going to see on that background check form, your form to purchase that they send in, is it asks you for your race on there, on that form. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. If that's a statistical thing that they're just trying to build a database to see who's purchasing what. But at the end of the day, if they didn't want a division, it shouldn't be on that form. Flat out, it doesn't matter what color you are. That should not be a factor when purchasing anything, right? It doesn't matter what it is. The other thing I wanted to throw out here was, just to throw this out there with Michael's comparison to the car thing. So, yes, Michael, you're right. A felon could go out, they can get a driver's license, and just to throw a little bit of statistics at you guys, we have about 32,000 gun-related deaths a year in this country, as to where we have about 50,000 vehicle-related deaths. So when you want to talk about which one is potentially more deadly, it is the vehicle side of this. And we're not limiting really who can drive. I mean, we do so with DUIs, things like that, whatnot. But then to take it a step back to say about the Second Amendment, we were talking about having the fully automatic weapons and why we don't have those anymore. So it was back in the 30s that they instituted the ban on fully automatic weapons, because at one time you could have these without regulation. Okay. They put that ban in on those back in the 30s, and then they pretty much stopped manufacturing of fully automatic weapons back in the 80s. So, I mean, I personally don't think anybody really needs to have a fully automatic weapon. I don't think it's a thing. I mean, if you want one, you can go through the steps and the background checks to get it, it's a very long, drawn out, extensive process. And there's certain areas you live in around the country that'll never approve it. It'll never happen. The chances of getting a fully automatic weapon in California, or, you know, maybe living in DC, good luck. It's not going to happen. But when we talk about how they ban that, that's just one more infringement. It's one more step that they're taking. I don't care if you want a fully automatic weapon or not, but it's just the idea that for years they've slowly been chipping away at the Second Amendment, and they're going to continue to do so. That's all.
Well said. I'm glad you brought up some of those points, and I think the reference to the 30,000 deaths by gun and 50,000 deaths by motor vehicle is something that I've got 2 or 3 pages here of stats, and I'll maybe run through them when it comes back around to me. That kind of what I've learned over the past couple of days doing my research is like when people do want to take guns off the streets completely. It's like, are you going to take knives off the streets completely? Are you going to take cars off the streets completely? Like, where do you stop? And then, a lot of the stats, like, again, we'll get to, well, I want to prove kind of like through these stats that having guns on the streets actually saves lives. And I've got a stat here that just shocked me. I learned this one today. And if it's true, which I don't doubt because it's the CDC website, that kind of, in fact, I'll just tell you guys, 500,000 people to 300 million people a year are saved by guns. The fact that someone has it on them, or even down to like a burglar or someone that's willing to do a crime in America, I'm sure that goes through their mind all the time before they commit a crime. This person might have a gun. Am I really going to do this? Here in the UK, you don't think twice. Like the violent crime in the UK soared after we took the guns in 1997. Knife crime, bats, baseball bats, poles. There's all violent crime that just made it shoot through the roof. So I also think the argument can be said for owning guns. Concealed carry. I don't know how many states. Maybe someone can answer it when it comes back to them. But if you're in a state that has concealed carry, like I think, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, those states have the least violent crime. And I even heard today that the 3 states that do have the most crime are the ones with the most gun controls: California, Chicago, and New York. I think they're the 3, and they're the 3 with the most restrictions. So that kind of goes in that narrative. Anyway, I'll pass over to Pook.
Just real
What have
quick,
you
those
got
are
to ask?
cities too you just named, right? The
Yeah,
Chicago,
yeah,
New York.
yeah.
I point that out though is because those small areas that are high population, actually, I think it's New York City, Chicago, and LA account for like the majority or a large proportionate amount of gun homicides. So that just
Okay.
wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and just add one. It's like drugs. I hear it in the drug argument. A lot of people take drugs because they're illegal, and when you make drugs legal, you'll find a lot of people just stop. And it's the same with guns. That argument. So anyway, Pook, what have you got to add?
I don't know if you can see this. Can you hear me? I got my video and camera.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's 17 years old. She got out of her car 5 nights ago, and she was going to go into a mobile gas station. A guy walked up to her, wanted her telephone. She kind of chuckled at him, and she says, "Yeah, boy, get away from me. Stop playing." He shot her twice in the stomach. Okay. And I want to show you something else. There's another picture of her. Okay. 17 years old.
Mhm.
Right. I'm an advocate of getting the guns off the street in certain hands. Unfortunately, the kid that shot her, give me 1 second. The kid that actually shot her was 14. This is the wound as it is today. Okay.
Wow.
That's heartbreaking for a 17-year-old child. Now, the argument here is her boyfriend was 18. He was sitting next to her, and he didn't have a weapon. In my opinion, the kid should have had one. You know what? I should have had one, or somebody else should have had one that was standing next to her to just take the other one out that chose to do that. And just spare the court system, and I know that sounds crazy and radical, but you know what? When somebody goes to do that over a cell phone, we can sit here all day long and try to overanalyze and blame somebody and everything else, but just eliminate it right from the beginning. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I
know what you
it
mean.
may be wrong, but my very best friend was killed back in December of 2018. She was the general manager of a hotel in Texas City, and one of her employees called out. She chose to go in and cover that shift. A guy walks in. He shouldn't have had a gun in the first place because he was a criminal, but we all know that they get them. And walked in, demanded the money. She complied. She did everything she possibly could. On his way out the door, he turned around and popped her in the head twice. She was prohibited from having a gun on that property. And it was a Marriott property, by the way. This was not, it was a Marriott Fairfield Inn and Suites. And I spent a long time in the business, and I was one of those people that always carried a gun. I didn't care whether I lost my job for it or not, because if it comes down to protecting myself or somebody else that I need to protect, then I'm going to make sure I make that decision. And it's going to be a concise decision. I'm not going to wait around and consider it or have second or third thoughts. But I just wanted to share with you, when this stuff hits home, it changes your mind. And when you're dealing with family and loved ones and everything else that are victims of these type of crimes, it really changes your mind, and it changes how you view things. I live here in the Houston area. Well, today I'm down at the coast. I'm fishing this weekend. But there's actually some roads here that are in the North Houston area. If I ever have to travel that road to go to Houston Airport, I always have to stay in the right-hand lane and make sure that I stop well before the car in front of me to make sure I have an exit strategy into a parking lot to the right in the event I get carjacked. That's daily life here. So, yes, it's a choice that I'm living here and that's going to change and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to be prepared. And when we start talking about limiting gun ownership and gun rights and everything else, no, absolutely not. I want to protect, Solid, if you were sitting next to me and somebody just chose to carjack you because your car looked better to them, I should have the right to jump out of that car, which I do have that right to jump out of the car and protect you and to save your life in the event that yours is in danger. And I think that's paramount.
Yeah. Before we go back, and what we'll do, we'll go in reverse order. We'll start with Jester, Solid, Michael Kee, and then back to myself. But before we do, we have another question from my friend Mitchell, who is asking everyone, and if you want to start with your next round of thoughts by answering this quick question, is has anyone on here needed to use their gun in day-to-day life? Now, again, in context, I think you guys know what he means by that. It's like, it's this feeling that I got when I first got into it. Like I'm listening to Americans sounding in as if they're like children. You're not taking away my gun. You're not taking away my toy. And I think what he's getting at is like, look, why do you need them? His comment to me before the show was, you tell me the last time the UK had a mass shooting, and I'm like, yeah, but you're missing the point. It's not about, yes, there's crazy people in the world that, these things happen, and it's sad, and I'm sure everyone's against them, but ultimately a lot of well, as Michael pointed out, the constitution is for in case of the rise up of tyrannical government. So what I was wanting to do is kind of eliminate the myth, because I believe it is a myth and it's not true that and the reason I want to go to Jester first is the whole thing about being vetted when you buy a gun. Michael also mentioned you get, if you go into the shop and buy 3 guns, you get vetted on each one. So Jester, if you could tell the listener and even me some more about, is it a myth that there are some states or cities that you can go into and just purchase it like it's, a toy shop, or, is that a myth? Is it true? And what are the vetting? What does it look like? Because before I jump over, I actually have, in the UK, we can own guns, and the vetting process is heavily restricted. It is, you're interviewed, you can have visits to your property, you have a criminal record check, you have references from friends, and your GP maybe even be contacted. So that's here in the UK. What is it in America, Jester?
Okay, so first off, when you go in to do these background checks, I want to say this: it's every state has this. It's a federal background check, which means this takes place in every state. As far as I know, there are no states out there where you could just walk in, purchase a gun, and walk out. In fact, there are a lot of interstate rules as well. Like if I want to cross state lines and go buy a gun, there's a whole different set of requirements because I'm not a resident of that state. So there could be a longer waiting period. They may not sell me certain firearms at all. There's a lot of differences there. As far as there is a lot of there's big differences in what you're buying. So certain states you have to have an approved permit to purchase a handgun, as to where a long gun you don't have to have these. Everybody talks about the gun show loophole, which is also a myth. The only time that a background check really isn't applied is when it comes to a private sale. Certain states around the country, though, you do have to do transfers and background checks with private sales. The state of Pennsylvania, if you want to privately sell a handgun to somebody, you have to physically go into a dealer and get that handgun transferred to that other person's name, and they have to undergo a background check. But, and the simple reality to that is just because you can get something, or just because you could sell something as a private citizen without the background check, criminals can do the same thing. And how Mitchell referenced here in the chats, he said, but if guns are illegal, none of these situations would arise in the first place. I have to disagree with that 100%. Drugs are illegal. It still happens. Murder's illegal. It still happens, right? So it doesn't matter what rules or regulations you put in place. Bad people are going to be bad people, and they're still going to find a way to get their hands on these things.
Yeah, well said. Solid. Oh no, sorry. Before we jump to Solid, answer his first question, because I'd love, you own guns. Do you use your gun daily?
So I carry a weapon on me all the time, and the weapon I currently have on me, I have a Ruger 22 LR. It's a tiny little pistol. I carry it everywhere just because it's easy, it's convenient. I mean, I'm not worried about carrying a giant round around with me because it's mainly for the protection. I can get the job done with that little 22. When it comes to daily use, though, I carry, if I'm out, in the woods doing stuff, I have a problem where I live with poisonous snakes and bears. So I carry a really big pistol out in the woods on a daily basis just in case I would encounter something. Where I live, like I said, we have the bear, we have the poisonous snakes, we have mountain lions, we have coyotes, and I have little children. If they're out in the wilderness with me, if we're going out hunting, doing stuff like that, to a mountain lion, my 6-year-old is prey, right? So the idea of carrying that daily as a tool to defend myself or my children if we're out, absolutely. And one thing I did want to say, because I'm an avid hunter, I do utilize my guns to put food in the fridge and put food in the freezer. And I think Solid Blue brought up, you don't use an AR-15 for deer hunting. Solid, I could tell you I have, and it's quite effective.
But to the first question though, about the daily use, do you guys obviously buy insurance on cars in your house in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Well, why do you buy insurance if you don't use that every day?
I know.
Just in case something happens,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any form of protection.
Yeah.
Insurance protection, self-defense protection.
Yeah.
Right. There's no difference.
I think with this one, I know what he's going to be thinking right now. It's like, because the emotions are there about the death, I'm sure we all know about here in the UK, the reason we don't have the access to guns, or guns are harder to get, is because of Dunblane Primary School in 1996. A guy went into the school and shot up a load of kids. Sandy Hook, Las Vegas shooting, all these things that are highlighted in the media are perfect for the government to take away things. And, that might be seen as a hard-hitting comment that I've just made there, but it's true. How long before the government, create, I know I don't want to go down that route, but you know what I mean, that they're capitalizing on things like that happening, and that's the best opportunity they have to do that. So I know where he's coming from, and like I said, it's a shame that we don't have someone on here that is, all about taking guns away from people, because I think the debate would get a bit more, it would be a stronger debate, because I think we all kind of disagree. We kind of agree on that we all have the right to guns, and as long as there's health checks and all that stuff, then there's no problem. So Solid Blue, what would you want to add to the conversation?
Earlier you said that emotion, emotion has to come into it. I have to again reference the Vegas shooting, because when it first happened, I didn't know that it had happened, and a friend of mine called and said, "Yeah, did you hear what happened?" And then they tell me, and so was killed, and somebody that I knew. And then after all the news is coming in, 2 more people that I knew were killed. So how can I not have an opinion, or emotion does come into it? And again, I say that the person who was doing the shooting, for whatever reason, should he have had a gun or a firearm in his hand, where he can go up to the 30th floor or whatever floor he was on and start shooting people. Now, some people may say that these were actors or whatever. And sorry, I have to say, for the people who I knew who are no longer here, they were not actors. They are dead. So again, it's just that we have that very fine line. And then to Pook, I say, I understand what you're saying, that if someone was going to carjack me, whatever, that you would defend me. But what if a person is coming up on you and they don't have a gun, they don't have a knife, whatever. They're just coming up on you trying to steal something. They're just going to beat you up. Am I going to pull out a gun and automatically shoot them?
Mm-hmm.
So and I look at somebody like what's her name, the police officer, Micaiah Bryant,
the one that just mistakenly shot the girl. She pulled out the wrong
with
one, the taser girl.
No. I'm talking about the 16-year-old last year, Micaiah Bryant. She was shot by a law enforcement officer when she was going after another girl with a knife.
Oh yeah, with the knife. Yeah.
Okay, so for something like that, it's like, this is a knife. This is not a gun. You couldn't shoot her in the arm. Couldn't shoot her in the leg.
So I want to
disagree with you, Lisa.
First of all, the majority. There's a reason why they say shoot center mass. Right? It's extremely difficult, whether you're a Navy SEAL, whether you're a cop, whether you're a regular person, okay? Especially because she was a moving target, for one, to hit someone like, so, I'm going to shoot him in the arm, all right? Here's the other thing. He was also shooting in the direction of both of them, trying to protect one of them.
Okay.
And a knife, correct me, maybe Jester or one of you has the stats, I believe, kill as many, or if not more people than a gun does. Knives are lethal, extremely lethal. Takes one stab wound. And if that was my daughter, all right, for whatever reason, whether they're fighting or not, okay, I don't care what the reason is. If someone was charging her with a knife and she was in distance, I wish that cop would have taken the same thing. Why? Because I deserve to see my daughter, and her be safe. And both people do, but the one girl, unfortunately, made the fatal mistake of deciding to charge at someone with a deadly weapon. And no matter which way you see it, I know people say, well, it was just a knife. A knife is just as lethal. That poor girl on the other end of that had nothing. She had nothing.
And while I understand that, I'm just saying that if someone is attacking you, and I know that nowadays you don't know what people have. You don't know if someone's going to pull out a gun, a knife, a baseball bat. I mean, you just don't know, but at the same time, it's like, again, if someone is coming at you and they don't have anything, they don't have a gun, whatever, they're just coming at you. They just want to, with their bare hands.
You have children, right?
Yeah, I have one son.
And so you had to work your entire life to provide for your son, right?
Absolutely.
What I always tell people, because I work in finance, investment, and so insurance, life insurance, stuff like that, disability is always a big thing. Your number one asset in life is your ability to earn an income and provide for your family, okay? A lot of times when people look at this problem, they look at it like, well, he wasn't going to kill you. You heard this with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. This is CNN, Cuomo said this to the lawyer. He said, he wasn't going to kill him. He's just going to beat him up or something like that. Just beat him up. That's it. And I'm like, if you, with your child, if someone charged you, they weren't going to kill you, but they mortally wounded you and affected you from going to work and earning an income now, right? And you were changed, altered for the rest of your life, and you weren't able to provide for your child, would you not think that the better alternative to that was you shooting and killing that person and defending yourself and not changing your lifestyle? Because there's more to it, right? And you shouldn't have to wait to be hurt, right? Or injured. And that's what they argued in the Rittenhouse trial, right? You don't have to wait for someone to be physically hurting you or in the process of killing you before you defend yourself.
Okay, then Michael, then let me ask this. I'm going to go back a couple of years to George Zimmerman. He was told to stay in his car several times. He chose to get out of his car, and he gets into a fight or whatever with a boy who had Skittles. So had he stayed in his car and did not have that gun and bring that gun out with him, then Trayvon Martin would still be walking around, whatever. So,
so that the argument there is someone who, what I was getting, you're talking about someone who, by that logic, initiated the contact, right? What I'm getting at, and what I think what we're saying is, we're not initiating it, right? Like going to Rittenhouse, he was there protecting some businesses, but he was walking around helping people. They have all of this documented on film. And the guy was chasing him, right? And he was running away. And then he got to a point he couldn't even run. He couldn't separate himself anymore, right? So he didn't initiate that. We're talking about someone actually approaches you. You didn't initiate anything. You didn't start anything, right? So when you're talking about defending yourself, that's where that is. Here's the other thing. It is better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Every time, 100%. Because dead is dead, no changing that, right? But if you leave it up to a trial by jury, let them decide. But at least you got a chance at that point. But you have the right to go home to your child. You have the right to provide for your child and your family and maintain your way of life, okay? And protect everything that you've worked hard for here in the United States, the American dream, owning a house, whatever it is. And you have the right and to keep someone from taking that away from you.
Can I just add on that before, I'm happy to let everyone just, open mic and have a debate back and forth. But there was something, and I'm gutted that I forgot the name, so someone help me out here. But it's more directed to Solid Blue. Does the name Stephen Williford mean anything to you? No. See,
I've never heard that name before.
In preparation for today's show, I was watching Louder with Crowder Change My Mind, the gun control episode, and he was actually in Texas, and he was at a university, and he's talking about, these pupils were sitting down with him, chatting and mentioning some of the main, the Sandy Hooks, the Las Vegas shooting, and he turned around and said to them, "Does Stephen Williford, does that name ring a bell to you?" And none of them knew. And it just happened 2 weeks earlier where one of the biggest, if not the biggest, shooting in American history. This guy was in a church up high, and he was shooting. I think he killed 27 people, and they didn't know about it. And what I'll tell you about that is, we could sit here for hours and talk about Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, all these other shootings, Aurora. And what I always say, and this is my view and my view only. I'm not talking for anyone else in the panel, but we see like the mainstream like to highlight the stories that will suit their narrative, and it is my opinion that they want to take the guns. Joe Biden's talked the other day about taking guns. It's been a debate for a long time now, and what they'll do is they'll highlight the ones that play into their narrative, and they'll ignore the ones that don't. And this one doesn't. The one it was in Texas. Silver. Wait, I can't remember. Sutherland spring shooting. Look that up, guys. So what happened there was this mass shooter actively shooting, and he was taken out by Stephen Williford, and that goes to show a gun saved many more lives, and that doesn't play into their narrative. He was stopped by a looker, a watcher, or a policeman. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that one a bit more, but it just shows you like there are stories that are to manipulate us and weaponize and get our emotions. And you're right, emotions does play a factor, but I don't think it should play the full factor, because basically, because there is criminals, why should I lose my rights? You have to govern with stats and facts. Otherwise, we would, like Jester mentioned earlier, we'd be taking cars off the streets if we let emotions run our world. We can't live that way. We have to live by hard facts and evidence. So I'm open, free to open up the mics, just a back and forth. Pook, I'll start with you. I know you've got something to say, and yeah, we'll get on with the debate.
Well, I think Michael brought up the insurance issue. I don't know about anybody else, but I actually carry something called Legal Shield that protects me for certain things, legal representation, all that kind of stuff. And part of this, to be able to qualify, is you have to be trained, and you have to have situational awareness, and you have to have all these other criterias to be covered under some of those policies. And when you start to look at specific situations, I think that's key, because you don't know whether somebody's carrying a weapon. And if they come at you in an aggressive manner, you have to be able to make a decision. You don't always have to wait to see the weapon or have it pointed at you, because by then you're probably going to be dead, right? But if you know they go like this, I don't know if you can see me because there's other things. I had somebody at a hotel one day got really mad about something. It was something stupid. He took a step back. He put his hand behind his back, and he said, "It's gonna be a bad day for you." And I stepped back, and I said, "Okay." And I reached across my side, and I just looked at him. And I was waiting for him to start. As soon as I saw the butt of that gun, I would have put a hole in him. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. And that's part of that responsibility, is to know how to manage those situations. And you pointed something out with law enforcement specifically, and their inability to do the right thing all the time. We can't say that they don't do it right all the time, because it's a fact. But at the same time, these police officers are on these streets. They're getting shot at, they're getting ran over, they're getting ran into by vehicles. God knows what's happening to them. And I think a lot of times they lack training of that situational awareness that they need, and they let their emotions and their adrenaline take over, and they react sometimes in a negative way. And I think there needs to be more of that. And I think that needs to kind of come into play with some of these controls that we want to talk about, or about what police can and can't do and those kind of things. But it starts with that training, and it starts with that mental training on how to adapt and how to manage their own situations. And I know that's important, Mike. nephew actually got in a lot of trouble because they have a training facility up in Bethesda, Maryland, and well, just outside of Bethesda. And he was going through this room where they were shooting targets, and he shot, he double tapped one target that actually had a baby. He got in a lot of trouble for that because it was part of their training, and they're like, "What are you doing? Why'd you take out the mom and the kid?" You know, but the mom was standing there with a gun. And I think those principles are important when it comes to looking how law enforcement deals with things. I just know they put up with a lot. And every time I see like a police officer, I always try to thank them for what they're doing. I don't try to look at what they're doing bad. You know, some of them are kind of amusing, and we all know that some have attitudes or whatever. But we have to put ourselves in their shoes, and we have to think about what they go through on a daily basis. And I see a lot of abuse to those police officers every day. We see it on social media all the time, how people are challenging them. Yes, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at this, but there's a sheriff in Trinity County, Texas called Woody Wallace. He has people come at him all the time trying to exercise their rights to do certain things. And he's very good about trying to manage the situation. But why are we putting them through a test when your sister or your neighbor down the street is getting shot? Right? I don't get it. For whatever reason, I can't mute myself, by the way.
That's okay. There's no
Because there's
background.
like a big statement or something. Oh, there it is. I just think the situational awareness is key for every police officer, anybody that's using a gun in the course of their employment.
Yeah, I mean that comes with it. I certainly, if I lived in America, I'd certainly, do a bit of training. Like, there's gun ranges there. It's something that I want to do when I next visit the US of A with the wife, because she is from California, and I know she's listening as well. And I've said to her, I've been there like 4 or 5 times, and I'm like, why haven't you taken me to a gun range? We just keep forgetting. There's so much to do. Disneyland every time it has to be done. So next time I'm going to a gun range. And I mean, yeah, what you were saying about the training and even some of that, it's like until you're in that position, like even you telling me that story where the guy put his arm behind his back, and that must have the nerves and the heart racing. It's like you can only, I don't think you can train for those types of moments, but you would do what you would have to do. I think that's your responsibility. If you're going to own a gun, you've got to do everything that comes with it.
That's the last thing I want to do is pull that gun and shoot somebody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if I do, there's only going to be one side to that story. So.
Yeah.
I think this comment from Mitchell was meant for Jester.
Yeah,
I replied to it in the comments on Twitch too.
So,
yeah.
Jester, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I do. First off, I want to say this to Mitchell. I don't carry a gun because I have the intention of going out and killing somebody. I carry a gun so I don't effectively be killed or suffer serious harm from somebody else. There's a lot of bad people out there. And when you get into this daily carry, my wife is also watching, and she's sending me these messages. She said, and she's like sending me things like the amount of women out there who aren't carrying is a problem because of the vulnerability of women. Women get kidnapped, raped, beaten. Like the statistics are very high on that. So the idea that people do have these protections, and how Mitchell was saying, you eliminate these things, you eliminate the problem, you're always going to have bad people out there regardless. So in the fact of the matter is we have this right, and that's a right I'm going to exercise. I went through the proper steps. I have my weapons training. I have my concealed license. I have all of these things. So I'm going to effectively exercise that right. And I know there's people out there that disagree with it, and that's their personal choice, just like it's mine to carry. And if somebody looks at me, kind of cross-eyed because they don't like that I carry, I mean, I could care less what they think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, is G.A. Grizz, because I think he has comment of the night, he's actually said, Jester was right, Ba is a sexy mother effer. So I'm
That's
actually
gotta be Grizz.
I'm actually wondering why Solid Blue hasn't put that up on
Wait,
the
hold
screen.
on. Hold on. I just saw it. I will put it up. There we go.
That's it. Comment of the night to GA. But actually, GA has actually had me in laughing because his previous comment was amazing as well. And I'm definitely going to post this on my social media after the show if I can just find it. If guns kill people, then cars get DUIs, pencils misspell words, and McDonald's made me fat. I love that. And again, it's I know. Yeah, that's it. So, guys, I think do we have a 2 hour limit on these calls?
We can keep going. We don't have a limit.
Okay. I was just going to say, look, keep the mics unmuted, and we can just, go back and forth if anybody wants anything to add, and we can, keep the debate going.
Well, does anyone want to address any of the comments that were made from people who are in the chat? Or
I've been typing and replying to some of the comments
let me
on Twitch and
bring up
stuff. So.
yours. Okay, this is what Mike. This is yours, right? No, wait, no, that's not yours. Hold on.
I replied to that comment below that.
You are capped at 5 people, by the way.
Okay, this is yours.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, and I was just saying because he brought up, okay, if you can carry it for hunting and stuff, you don't need it for shopping and all that. Again, and I think this is where the outside world looking in has a big misunderstanding, and I'm shocked that people in the UK misunderstand this because I figured that we made them understand this pretty well back in 1776. But I'm just gonna keep throwing the jokes out there. But I think there is a misunderstanding as to, and even here in the United States, because you always hear the comment, you don't need that gun to kill an animal. Well, I don't need a gun to go hunting anyway. Hell, I hunt. I'm an avid hunter, and I bow hunt the majority, like 90% of the time. I have a bow. You can hunt with a crossbow, right? But that's not what it's for. If they got rid of guns tomorrow, it would not change my hunting whatsoever. Right? In fact, I have actually been an advocate. I don't think Jester may agree with this. He might. He likes to bow hunt too. But I think something that maybe they should do conservation-wise is limit rifle hunting more and push bow hunting more. So I have actually gone that route as far as the hunting thing. But the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. It doesn't mention it anywhere in our Constitution giving us the right to hunt. The Second Amendment is solely for the purpose of defending ourselves from enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, that's whether it be a Russian invasion, like what we're seeing in Ukraine, because they have to pass out weapons. They made it mandatory for every male between the ages of 18 and 60 to stay behind and fight for the country. Here's the thing. Do you think Russia, because I know that some of the reservists, and I know some citizens in Ukraine had firearms, but I don't know what their gun laws were. But I don't think they were regular. Do you think that if every citizen was armed like they are here in the United States and Ukraine, that Putin wouldn't have thought twice about going in there? He absolutely would have. Because even now, with what they're seeing massive losses and being held up. It's for that purpose. You have to look at that. And then from our own tyrannical government. I can't remember who it was that brought up, I think it was you, maybe Solid, about in your first comment, something like the outside government, England being an outside form of government coming in. Like, King Henry was putting, I think it was King George, though.
King George.
Yeah, King George was putting soldiers over here. But you have to remember, the King of England was at that time no different than our government is today. They were their government. That's who they were under law by. And the Revolutionary War started because of taxation without representation. And then it actually kicked off and sparked into a shooting war when they mandated that the citizens give up their firearms. Why did they want to give up the firearms? Because they were threatened by the colonists. And they knew that they had no control and they didn't want a rebellion. So that's where that comes into. In all of that stuff, when you go back, I thought this was interesting because I've been looking at a lot in history, like with the Roman Empire. a lot of the stuff that the Roman senators and emperors dealt with, you wouldn't imagine this, but it was a lot of the same stuff that we deal with today. A lot of the societal problems, taxes, the happiness of the people and social issues and all that stuff. It's really incredible how similar, even with different technologies, it was. And that same thing plays true back in 1776. We want to act like it was so long ago, and it wasn't. It was 250 years ago, 249, I think, years ago. And hell, we live, till 80, 85? So that's roughly 3 people, 3 lifetimes ago, which means that if we all know someone that served in World War II, more than likely. But that was 70 years ago. But when you think about it, it wasn't that long ago. We knew someone that knew someone that knew our founding fathers. When you break it down like that, it was, we always often look at generations, but when you put it into terms of a lifetime, how many people when you were 5 to 10 years old do you remember that were 90 years old when you were, and you remember talking to them? A lot of us do, right? And when you play that back, the founding fathers were not that long ago, and all of those same issues still hold true today. It just looks different with the technology and the way we have houses and everything like that, but it's still the same social problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there's reasons why the stuff was implemented.
Yep.
Which means to me, we really haven't grown. We haven't moved the needle if we're still dealing with the same crap.
What I'm saying is, it's not that we haven't made progress, right? I'm just saying that the reasons why things are implemented, right? We're always making progress, because obviously things were a lot different back then. Things were different 150 years ago in the 1860s and before that. We know they were vastly different. Things were vastly different in the 1960s, especially in the South where I'm from. Vastly different. But and we are a species that is ongoing, as far as making progress. I think we can all agree, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like that. But there's one thing that is certain. We've always killed each other. We've always gone to war, and we've always tried to conquer each other. Okay? So as much progress as we've made, here's the thing. What society in history has been more culturally diverse? And I'm not talking about because when you look it up, I think, they have countries in Africa where they have, 1,000 different tribes, and they say they're culturally diverse. I think that's a lot different than when I talk about the United States, and we have people from literally every country in the world. Every language is spoken here, right? All different opinions, and we can actually freely express those opinions. And we actually, for the most part, live very united, as much as it doesn't seem like it. We're not shooting each other on a massive scale yet. And when you look back in history, it's never happened before. But we still have, we will always go to war. We will always have crime. People will always do bad things, and we will always need to protect ourselves.
Am I right in saying, Michael, since 1776, America has not been in war for 20 years out of those, 200 and odd, 300 years, whatever it is?
That's probably true as far as some kind of war, yeah. Now, we haven't, the last war that was ever fought here was between ourselves in the Civil War, right? And there's, we have in the United States grown into something that we go out and we start, and this is something I am against, as much as it sucks and it's so sad seeing what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and seeing these people die and you feel so bad for them. I don't think we should interfere, just like I don't think we should be fearing in the Middle East, and I think we cause a lot of the problems that we bring onto ourselves. And, someone brought up a good point, though, is when you're the most powerful country in the world and you're the largest country in the world, everyone looks to us in everything we do. People talk about China and Russia. We have the most influence on it when it comes to anything. And it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? If we went in and we had boots on the ground in Ukraine and we're killing the Russians, people would be pissed and livid around the whole world saying that we're just a big bull and we just are warmongers and we're pushing this to happen, right? But then when we stay out of it, people say, why aren't you helping? I can't believe you're not getting involved and doing more. And so it's a lose-lose situation in the United States. And from the outside looking in, people just don't seem to understand the position that we're in, I believe.
Mhm.
But there's also reasons as to why we are the most advanced, richest country in the world. All right, we have the biggest economy. We have 250,000 people a month are trying to illegal or are successfully illegally crossing the border. I know Pook doesn't like that term, but they are. Why? Some of them are coming because of drugs, but a lot of them are coming because of the opportunities that they can have here.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
just Mexicans that are coming one state or one border over. A lot of them are coming from South and Central America and walking through deserts and thousands of miles to get here. If it was they just want to get out of their country, they just go to the next country. No, it's they want to come here. People are illegal from coming here from Canada. People are come here illegally from Africa, from everywhere.
Let them come.
Come on, Pook. We're
We're-
not getting
we're-
into
we're-
this conversation right now.
I know. We're actually thinking about doing immigration the next show. So, you never know. We might have you on for that one. But
That's fine.
I was just
Oh,
gonna.
going.
Yeah, I was just gonna. Sorry, on you go. Solid.
No, I was just going to say this next comment by Mitchell. I think Pook should probably. I think
Yeah,
this was
I'll let.
addressed to Pook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get to him. So I just wanted to read out some facts. I've got a page and maybe two others at the. Yeah, I'll quickly run through them, because I think they're important to get the context of guns, especially for people in the UK and other countries that don't have the freedoms to the Second Amendment that America has. So you're 19 times more likely to be knifed than shot in America. The highest cause of death in America is suicide. Violent crime has been decreasing consistently over the last few decades in America, obviously. I think Jester mentioned 32,000 deaths. I've got 30,000 deaths per year due to guns. I must be a different year. 17,000 of those were suicides and 13,000 were homicides. But again, that comment that I made earlier, 500,000 to 3 million lives are saved each year because of guns, and that's from the CDC website. New York, Chicago, and California, they have the most strictest gun laws, but they have a lot of gun crime, more so than the states that do have freer access to guns. The UK banned guns in 1997, and violent crime goes through the roof. I actually tripled in the following years. Indian women were petitioning and protesting heavily to have the rights to firearms because the police won't and can't protect them. I think there was a big story not too long ago. A lot of Indian women were being raped, and they felt unprotected by the police, and they wanted guns. So I like pointing comments like that out because I know I'm not picking arguments or fights with the left, but the emotional people that look at Sandy Hooks and look at Aurora and look at Las Vegas and just think with their heart that these comments about Indian women, who I'm sure you guys will get behind also, how does that make you feel? The UK took the guns in 1986, which went on to triple the violent crime because of the threat of gun ownership isn't a factor. Like I said earlier, if you're going into a state in America and you know they have concealed carry, you're going to think twice before you commit a crime. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. We've already mentioned that. Stalin took the guns, Mao took the guns, the famous quote from Alex Jones in that video. I know we haven't really touched on history, but it's of my belief that before every democide, which is when government take out a lot of the civilians, they take the guns. Venezuela, what's happening there in the last few years is just insane. Stalin, Mao, Chavez, Fidel Castro, they all took the guns just before the genocide. And I mean, in the last 2 years, for what's happened and some of these videos you're seeing from Australia, I certainly want guns here in the UK. I can tell you that because someone knocks on my door and threatens to take me out, I want guns to defend myself, and unfortunately, we don't have that. Because there is criminals, I don't lose my rights. This is a tactic that the government do. They'll highlight things that they want to highlight, and then they'll enforce a law or a ruling over everyone because of that one event. One person ruins it for everyone, and I'm dead against those type of events. And then finally, I heard in a video today, and I'm not sure, so don't quote me on this one, but Mexico has a total gun ban, but has the highest crime rate in the world. And I
Mhm.
know there are factors to that. I know there's corrupt police and all that stuff, but it still goes. Like, no guns in your country, the crime rate does go up. It's an obvious pattern. So just something for people to think about. And again, if you want to check out this stuff and fact check me, feel free, because I'll cite my sources at the end of the show. Even when we upload, I can put in some of the videos for you guys to watch. But to me, the pattern's there. It's all there. And for me, having guns is a deterrent for crime. So yeah, that's my opinion.
And I actually hit on that too in the comments to your friend, but as far as but I'll let Pook address that comment. And I also did too. But Pook can go ahead and address the comment there on Twitch.
I don't see Twitch, so I don't see what the comment is. Is it
Okay.
the one about thinking less crime happens in
Yeah.
America because we carry guns?
hmm
I think it's a deterrent, especially here where I live. I would guarantee you that 40% of the people you're going to encounter here have a weapon. It's either in their car or it's on their person. And I think it deters crime to an extent, but I don't believe that the overall statistics are less just because we can carry the guns. Um, I'm a huge advocate that teachers need guns in schools and they need to be trained and they need to be able to respond in the event that there's an issue. Not wait for the two security guards that are at the front door to make their way to another annex of a building. By then, you've already lost 10 lives or 12 or 14. You guys know Hitchcock, Texas was one of the sites for the mass shootings a couple years ago. And a good friend of mine, actually, you guys probably, I can't say, but somebody that I know, his wife works in that school. She was there. And had she had a weapon, she probably could have took that guy out in a matter of seconds. But she wasn't allowed to carry it. But I think that because of the fact we can carry guns, I think it's a deterrent overall. But I also think that you've got that percentage of people that choose to use them as a first resort instead of a last resort. And I don't know if I agree with the homicides in America with you on the 90+%. Is that statistically correct?
So what I'm saying is as far as so drugs is a main driver. Okay. If you look at where the highest homicide rates take place, and I believe I saw that statistic somewhere, but I need to go back and double check it. But yeah, a lot of the gun homicides are gang related, especially in Chicago. I believe it was like 88% were in black communities and related to gangs. They were gang related. The majority of gang operations revolve around the drug trade. I think we can all agree on this.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at the top 10 countries for the highest crime rates, Venezuela, which we all know what's going on in Venezuela, right? You have Honduras, Trinidad, Tobago, El Salvador, and Brazil with El Salvador's MS-13, but very high
They're
drug
here.
trade. Huh?
They're here,
Yeah.
by the way.
Oh yeah. But a lot of this revolves around drugs. So someone brought up Mexico. Mexico actually has a similar Second Amendment, but they have made it so difficult to get a firearm. And we know about the drug trade in Mexico. 96,000 people a year die. I talked about this last time on my show, and I know Solid Blue Sister had some opinion on this and all that, but regardless, 96,000 people a year die from drug overdoses. All right, this isn't counting how many people even have an overdose or are addicted. 70% of that revolves around fentanyl, but the majority of those drugs, all right, are coming from these countries. Those drugs, if you ban guns, those drugs aren't banned, and the criminals still will have the guns. We established that earlier. When Jester brought up the automatic weapons ban in the 1930s, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a lot of that came from the mafia using the Tommy guns. Okay. The mafia really gained power when they put prohibition in place. And that's how the mafia really started growing. Prohibition, by the way, alcohol crime and alcohol consumption and use, I believe, was far higher when they outlawed it than when it was legal before and when it was legal afterwards. Why? People seem to do things when it's illegal. Drug use. I'm one of these people, unlike a lot of conservatives with the marijuana stuff. I think we should just go ahead and legalize marijuana. Tax it. Because I'm not for spending all this money that people want to spend money on. But if you want to implement these programs, you have to find a source of revenue, and why not do it with that? Okay. Now, there's certain drugs like fentanyl and stuff we don't need to legalize ever. But a lot of this drug trade and the crime revolves around the drugs. And we have so many people every year dying, but we don't ever want to focus on that. Why? Because it's a profitable income source, be it government people that are involved in it, be it certain maybe corporations are involved in it, whatever you want to think, but it is a problem. It's destroyed black communities. It's destroying white communities now with the fentanyl deal. It is eventually destroying everyone.
Yeah.
And it does not discriminate. But we don't want to focus on that problem. We want to focus on what is killing the person, right? And it's not even close as far as the guns and the drugs.
Alex Jones actually pointed that out to Piers Morgan. He's like, your sponsor of your show is Prozac, who on the label of your medicine, whatever it is, tablets, I don't know what Prozac is, it says may cause you to have suicidal thoughts. And he says, and go about killing people. It's like the drugs are, a big factor. And I would say even in the background checks, if you're on certain types of medication, I know that's probably a deterrent from you being allowed to have a gun, and quite rightly so.
So the guy that did the Sandy Hook shooting, okay, was off of his medication. So the mom who he killed, someone's got a lot of feedback in their mic. The mom who was killed, all right, it was her gun. The kid, I think their parents were separated, the mom and the dad. He was on psycho medication. I don't know what for, but he was on some kind of psycho medication and stopped taking them. I believe the mom kind of allowed him to stop taking them, and the dad was trying to get him back on it, but he wasn't taking that medication. See, we always, and remember, not what, like earlier this week, maybe on Solid Show, I talked about my statistics and the numbers I like to use, but I said how we interpret them is a big thing. We're going to interpret crime like, okay, the stop and frisk. How many people are we taking to jail? How many criminals are we locking up? And saying, instead of looking at it like, okay, here's how many crimes are occurring. How can we keep these crimes from occurring? What is causing these crimes from occurring? Right? What is causing people to go do a mass shooting? Well, they're usually messed up in the head for the most part. And so the mental illness thing comes into play. Or maybe they're on drugs. Why are there gangs that are so caught up in the drug trade that are out shooting each other? Because that's what a lot of it is, right? Or out causing violent crimes. How can we cut down on that? So, child pornography. For there to be child pornography, there has to be a market for child pornography. All right? If no one ever watched child porn, then you couldn't sell child porn, and no one would do it because there's no money to be made in it. There's no economy for it. It's the same thing with drugs, except it's a little bit different because you could actually, let's say marijuana. We have people locked up for 20, 30 years under the 90s crime bill for selling marijuana or getting caught with marijuana on them, right? And we could legalize that. Like we're going to give people pain medication, opium, get them addicted on that. But when we have other alternatives that are a lot safer and don't necessarily kill you, like we don't ever want to why? Because there's money to be made in some of this stuff. Why don't you hear about cocaine being a big driver anymore? Why? Because there's probably more money to be made in the fentanyl and heroin trades. But cocaine used to be the thing. Crack used to be the big one, right? Why don't we hear about crack a lot anymore? But so this is where there's underlying causes to a lot of this stuff that could be fixed. All right. When you're fat and you have heart problems, all right, why are you fat and why do you have heart problems? Well, you may have heart problems because of your weight, right? Well, why do you have weight problems? Oh, is it because you just sit around and watch TV all day? Like, there's a causation to a lot of it. There's always underlying causes. We don't want to focus on the underlying causes, right? People kill people. Guns don't kill people. I've never had a gun that shot someone without me pulling the trigger, or it's never happened.
I think you have something against fat people. You always seem to work that in somewhere in some conversation. I don't know what it is, but you're fixated on it.
It's an easy comparison to me. I don't know why. Look, I'm not trying to body shame, okay? And I know people have reasons, okay? I'm just saying that and excuse me that, I kind of will explain things, that may not come off as nice, but I'm just, that's just how I can correlate it. But, I never see preventative stuff. They always talk about, okay, we want to get health care and we want to pay for everyone's health insurance and we want to pay for all the health problems that they have, instead of focusing on how can we eliminate these health problems from the beginning. And this goes to or a lot of the things that we talk about with gun violence, if you want to talk about socioeconomic problems in our communities, right? How can we help that? How can we get kids off the street? Well, maybe we get them into sports or after school programs, right? Maybe we fund stuff like that, teaching them how to do certain things. Maybe we focus on, having jobs. Maybe we provide tax incentives in the Black communities that will allow people to retain more of that income, and benefits to try and start businesses, right? And be a part of and partake in the economies. And then that way they're not always reverting to gun violence. I saw YAW is something my college coach used to always talk about. And YAW, YAW, and the acronym is you are who you associate with. All right. And someone I was listening to before this, it says, when you have like gang violence or black on black crime, and this is coming from a Black guy that came from one of these areas, he said what he always noticed was it wasn't like they were just going out and wanting to shoot people. You have bad people, but a lot of them were kids that grew up and they grew up around that stuff. And they either carried a gun because they were in an area where it was very dangerous and they were scared and they needed to defend themselves. And they had that gun for, it may not be legally attained, but they needed it because they were scared. Or they looked up to the people that were doing the bad things and they kind of modeled after them, right? But it still is, if you have to fix underlying causes before you start blaming an inanimate object. Like it's I don't think it's even a debate when it comes to that.
Ram, I have a question for you. You guys have universal health care there, right?
Yeah, well, it's NHS. NHS is socialized healthcare.
And give me a brief statement about what you think of it.
It's shit.
Okay. I was just curious.
It's a bit. I'm against socialized anything. I'm an anarchist, and I believe that everything should be privatized, and you should only pay for it if you need it, pay as you go type. That goes for healthcare, police, everything really. I don't think we should be paying taxes at all. So yeah, that's my stance. Because I think it breeds poor standards. I think doctors who are receiving their £80,000 a year salary, whether they do a good job or a bad job, which is what not socialism is, breeds shit, breeds crap. Yeah. Have I froze, by the way?
You are, yeah, but no one else is.
The video has.
Why? Okay, carry on.
Carry on.
Did you want to say something else to
I'm
that?
going to have to get off of here actually in just a minute.
Okay. Yeah, because we're at the 2-hour mark. I guess while Bob is
High
trying to,
tide isn't too far away, and I can't be out there for that. I'm sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. Well, while Bob is trying to get his video together, does anyone want to make any last remarks or anything before we wrap this up? Jester?
I got something I'd got something I'd like to add in there. Just for everybody out there that's, pro gun ban, that wants to get rid of the guns, that wants to take them off the street. I want you to leave the show with this information. Approximately 32,000 gun deaths per year. Okay. Compared to over 70,000 drug related deaths per year. And drugs are illegal. So just put that into perspective in your minds.
Michael?
I want to go real quick because I know Pook will probably go catch me on this. So where I got the 90% from Pook was just an article I read in Chicago, and I pulled a statistician and used that as my what is it called, my population, like the statistical population, and just broadened it, right, and said, okay, what's happening in Chicago is happening everywhere else, because that's what they were saying. They estimated about it was 88% was the number they used of those shootings in Chicago were related to either gang violence and black on black crime in those communities. So that's where I got that statistic. I just want to lay that out. So is that the hardcore statistic? You'd have to go find that. All right, that was just based off an article, and I was just doing what every other statistician does. And if it's 10,000 people relates to them, then it must relate to the rest of the country. So take that with a grain of salt. But I was just trying to get a point across.
Who?
Instead of free college, I think you should educate the public on how to use a weapon and not restrict any ownership rights.
And I think crazy people should not own guns. That's what I think. And Bob, if you want to come to California, I will be more than happy to take you shooting, because my husband and I do it all the time.
Awesome.
Solid. One of the biggest things though is if you're on I'm going to call it a mentally altering drug, or a whatever you want to say, mind altering drug. If you have a history of it 8 years ago, should you still be accountable for that today?
As long as you're not showing that mental whatever now.
But who is that for? Here's the thing though, and that's where the problem comes in for me, is we can't look at what happened 8 years ago and what your status is today. I have a friend that's on some mind altering drugs like that, and he will never be able to own a gun in the state of Texas because his history and his medical history is tied to the government oversight now, where they're looking at his medication and they're going to prevent him from legally owning a weapon.
But Pook, that goes with everything. If you are a convicted felon, you cannot vote. I don't think that's fair.
I don't either.
So everybody is always going back to look at, Johnny is in my class now, but last year he was just a terror. Well, Johnny could have grown up between 4th grade and 5th grade, and now he's a model student. So, so that's always going to happen.
But what happens? Do we have them take a test, or we have them evaluated, and that's where it kind of goes? In other words, where does it end?
You're right.
Because once it starts, it's never going to stop. It's only going to get more and more and more strict as time goes on.
No, and
I don't disagree that people with mental issues should not have a weapon.
But how do we judge? What do we do? And it seems like that's the question that we ask constantly about everything. What does it do? When does it stop? It just seems to be, that question just seems to pop up in everything.
Sure. And specifically in Texas, if my neighbor chooses to call the police and say that I've lost my mind, they can come out here and they can legally take possession of my weapons, take them away from me for good.
Well,
based on what my neighbor tells them of what their assessment is.
But to me, that's law. That's more of a legal thing. I mean, that's just like saying if I'm an Uber person and I drop somebody off at somebody's house and they're going in there to terminate, a birth or whatever, then I'm going to get in trouble. And I didn't know that, so that's a legal thing.
Well, and another thing though, going back to what like the reporting, something with these red flag laws, right? Is they wanted to be able to like have your ex spouse sign off or have the ability to say that you were on. And how many people have a terrible relationship with their ex spouse, right? And they're not a bad person. It just, for whatever reason, didn't work out between them, and they have hate going on there, right? But that's fair. That's not really fair, in my
No,
opinion.
I mean,
And-
again, that's a legal thing.
yeah. And going back to as far, and I wanted to clear this up. I agree with you on like what you said about the felons. Solid. We take someone's voting rights away forever from someone who is a felon. Okay. Now, outside of the pedophilia stuff, all right, because someone brought up to me, well, you make pedophiles remain on a registry after they serve their time. There's some crimes we're letting people off easy on, in my opinion. So they're lucky. But someone who committed a felony, they served their time in prison, and they're out, they should be able to vote after they have served their time. Now, while they're in prison, no. But after they serve their time, all right, that the judge and the jury felt was necessary for that crime that they committed, they should be able to vote. As far as guns go, I think, and I haven't put a lot of thought on this, but if someone has a crime revolving around it, like a violent crime, maybe we can look at, we take that Second Amendment right away from them, once they're a felon forever. But if someone committed tax evasion or credit card fraud, and they go in, they serve their time, they screwed up, and they come out, why wouldn't they be allowed to own a firearm? So I can get on board with that conversation for sure. You can't just say, well, you're going to take this right away, but not that right away. Because I said, well, I think they should be able to vote after they serve their time, but you don't think they should ever be able to own a firearm again after they serve their time. So I think it is going to come down conditionally as to what you did beforehand that you can take a look at after they're served their time, right? The other thing, going back to the crime issue, a lot of the crimes that are committed and a lot of the reason why people are in prison, and this actually holds true, I would say more so in lower income communities, is, and we talked about this, because they violate parole after they've served time in jail. And if you commit a crime, you get sent to jail. Why are we holding people to these crazy parole standards that they have no chance of abiding by, and they're just going right back to jail? So there are certain things we need to change that will completely reform our prison system. It would completely reform, I think, the rights that people have, and allow people to maybe be more beneficial afterwards. Like, I mean, I think it was on Jester's show or whatever. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I know Pook and I think have talked about that too. Like, we're sending people, we're expecting them to be this model citizen that breaks no laws, that is, goes and gets a job like, a week after they've been out of prison after they served a 10-year prison sentence. And like, it's just crazy. And they can't do that, especially when you go back to areas where you had nothing when you went in, and you damn sure don't have anything when you get out. So there's a lot of things that need to be changed, that are causations as to why we have a lot of the crime that we do, that I think need to be addressed before we even remotely start having the gun conversation.
Yeah. What I would like to do is go around the room one last time. I mean, I'm not pushing you guys away. If you want to stay, we can all have a chat after it with the cameras off, with the stream finished. That's fine. But I'd like to keep the show to 2 hours, for uploading purposes. But I'll just go around the room one last time, give your final remarks, and let the listeners, and even, I mean, I'm keen to know if any of your opinions have changed in any way, or if they've got stronger or less strong. For me, I'll start with myself. Obviously, my opinion on gun control is I'm very jealous of America in regards to their Second Amendment. As I said at the start, for people in the UK that are maybe listening tonight, listening to people from America, and it hasn't been on display tonight, but when you watch your Alex Jones against Piers Morgan and probably other debates as well, for living in a country where there is no guns and we don't see it, so we think it's the best way. Take the guns away from people, there's going to be no crime. Like my friend Mitchell said, it's not about that. It's just about like when Michael read out the Second Amendment, it's about defending yourselves from the government as well. It's not just about hunting. It's about defending yourself. And Pook's brought up a couple of personal stories, and then even that one, he shared the horrific pictures of the girl, and that's such a tragedy. And it makes you think, like, if we had guns, yes, people would have to die, but I would say ultimately the people that are the criminals would die in those instances, not the innocent ones. So, I mean, it is a tough one, and I'm also not open to the background checks. I think I'll go away and I'll have a look into those, because when I'm listening with my mind, and you guys all know where I come from. I'm a conspiracy show, Baramu podcast. I don't like the thought of government telling people you're mentally unfit because of this, and is it fair for everyone? There's corruption there, and I think it has been touched upon with someone being on a certain type of drug, and that ultimately excludes them. And even Michael, you mentioned about having Tourette's, and that might have excluded you. To me, that's wrong, and I don't like that, because then they can use that for their own benefit. Because ultimately, I think the reason they're taking away guns, or trying to, is because the government demo side, is everyone. I think everyone with a few brain cells believes that in the next few years, the next 10, 15, 20, and 50 years, that there could be what's happening in Venezuela. It could come to here, to the UK. It could come to America, and without guns, I think we stand a less fighting chance. So my opinion hasn't really changed, although I would be open to the type of gun that we're allowed to have, and the background checks. I think that's the only bit where I would kind of have a bit of play. So that's my thoughts, and I've enjoyed the show. Thanks everyone for coming. But Michael, I'll ask you for your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, it hasn't changed. It's going to be hard to ever change it, just because of it goes. My opinion derives from the Constitution, right? How I interpret that, and what I think the risk and the reward of the whole control conversation brings. And so that's kind of I don't know if anyone could ever change that opinion, honestly. So
Okay, solid.
My opinion hasn't changed. I mean, if you want to own guns, I just say irresponsible people should not own guns. That goes for whomever you are, whatever trade you're in, whatever job you have. If you're irresponsible, you do not need or should have a gun. My opinion has not changed.
Jester.
I mean, this is something that I could go on and on about for days here, but I mean, I feel that anybody that is capable of legally possessing a firearm that is in their right state of mind should absolutely own one, and they should exercise that right to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah, well put. Pook.
I haven't changed my mind on anything. That's funny. I do have one issue with Michael Kee. And
just one.
Yeah, just one. Well, this is a big one. You had said that you believe that we should advocate bow and arrow hunting. Have you ever had a mad elk come at you?
I haven't.
Okay. I don't think your arrow's going to stop.
I know. Or moose either.
If anything, it's going to stomp right over top of you. I was just curious.
I whitetail hunt. Okay, usually they're not running.
Oh yeah. No, elk's not going to work with an arrow.
I should have specified.
But no, my opinion hasn't changed, and the truth is I don't know exactly where Blue lives. I know sort of, but specifically, you guys know I'm in the Houston area. Crime's bad here, and this is something we face every single day. And we have to give consideration to this happening to us every single day when we walk out of our houses, or even today when I walk out of my RV to go down here back to the pier and or the beach, and somebody just go off and shoot a bunch of people. We don't know what that looks like. But I don't believe in the controls. I just don't. And I'm a liberal, so go figure.
You're like a true liberal, like liberal, like free liberal, like don't mess with me.
Yeah, I think
Let me do my
Jester calls me his unicorn liberal or
Yeah.
something. Democrat.
Well, I am in Southern California. I'm about 40 miles from Los Angeles and about an hour from San Diego. So that kind of tells you where I am.
Yeah. You need
But
to carry your gun too.
yes, I can.
You need to. You
I
need
mean,
to.
and I do have a permit, where I can walk around with my gun, whatever. But I'm just, I just think that irresponsible people don't need to have guns. But I do, before I pass it back over to Bob, I do want to say that I am so happy that you guys came. I think this was fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Whatever, we have more topics, whatever. But we've been talking about topics, just so you all know, that are going to get kind of. It's probably some people may not like them because I really want to do like a transgender and things like that, and some people may not like my comments, whatever. But I mean, if you're going to do shows, I mean, yes, it's okay to do fun shows, whatever. But I also want to do shows that people don't like to talk about. And Michael, I'm sorry.
That's a problem right there, Pook.
I'm sorry, but Michael, you would not get my vote.
That's okay.
But anyway, but I am glad that you guys came and took time out of your Saturday, whatever, to come. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been a great show, very informative, and we've had a good lot of questions from the chat. This is the first time we've used the Melon app and streamed over Twitch and YouTube. So thanks for you guys to tune in and all that. And yeah, we do it. We've got a lot of shows. We've got a lot of lists. COVID, immigration, trans, abortion, a lot of topics that are going to, hit some people hard. And like we want that. We want to have those conversations because a lot of people, and I've said this tons of times, people walk out the room and get mad and all that over that. You're never going to solve these issues if you're going to act that way. So having roundtable debates like this is it's a real passion of mine and Solids, and I can tell you guys as well, and you guys have been a pleasure to have on. So you'll definitely be on the list for coming back again. So guys, thanks again. Stay where you are if you want. We can chat after, but I just want to end the show. So for those that's listening, this has been episode 2, Gun Control. Hope you've enjoyed it. We will be uploading this episode probably tomorrow night by the time we add the intro and the music and all that. We are on YouTube, BitChute, and I think one other place for video. I'll post all this in the description. Audio, we're on pretty much everywhere you can find us, because I'll extract the audio and post out as just a listening. But you want to see our beautiful faces. You want to see the expression on our faces as we're saying these things. You want to watch us, so head over to YouTube, and we are called Friendly Differences Podcast. So yeah, guys, thanks again.
I do want to add one thing. I know Michael and Jester, you guys have shows. So once again, if you want to tell everyone what shows you're on.
Yep.
Yeah, mine's just the Real Conservative Talk podcast. We're on Podbean, obviously. We have a YouTube page, trying to grow that now, but it's just Real Conservative Talk, and then the Facebook page, Real Conservative Talk as well. If you're going to listen to the podcast, you can find it on any platform, Spotify, Apple, whatever podcast platform is really out there.
Jester?
Yeah, thank you. So you guys can find our show, It's Doomsday Podcast, on every major platform that carries podcast. We're out there. And we also stream daily, Monday through Friday, daily, a news show in the morning on podbean.com. You can find that. And then I stream on the weekends and in the late evenings on podbean.com as well. And they're very uncensored, wild, crazy shows in the evening. So if you guys want to come in for a good time, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, and I am my turn to talk Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And of course, friendly differences. Right now, we're every 2 weeks trying to get more shows, but I am on Podbean and I am on Apple and a couple other places. But that's it. So I'll throw it back over to Bob.
And I am Baramu Podcast. I have a conspiracy, politics, philosophy kind of show on BitChute, YouTube, although a lot of my podcasts are censored on YouTube. So BitChute has them all. Audio version pretty much everywhere as well. So look out for us. And we're also on Instagram, Baramu Podcast. Solid Blue Sister on Instagram, and we have Friendly Differences. So go over there. I actually uploaded a poll in preparation for the gun control. I asked everyone which are beliefs, so we'll include the results in the show description. But guys, thanks again for having you on. And I would like to end with a saying that I learned, and I watched this speech from a Mr. Charlton Heston when he said the famous 5 words, "From my cold dead hands." And I mean, I honestly believe that the reason why America is not at the state that Australia are in right now is because of the Second Amendment. So that's my final word. And thanks again for being on the show. So guys, we'll catch you later.
Have a good day, guys.